Hello everybody and welcome to another episode of the Disney Q&A, the series in which you guys throw me all sorts of questions regarding Disney, the company, the place, the movies, and I try to give you answers to the best of my abilities. Today we're not here on MC Magic, we're on Magical Dreams, the Disneyland recreation server. MC Magic's down for maintenance. I figured why not mix it up a little bit, so let's go wander around, I guess, Disneyland a little bit and answer some questions about Disney. Let's dive right in because we got a bunch of good ones. So, the first one comes from, well, let's find the entrance here. The first one comes from Copycat705, who actually, I don't really have a good answer for this one, asks, is taking the train down to Orlando good? For our next trip, we're thinking of taking Amtrak's Auto Train, which allows you to take your car on the train, and it brings you down to Sanford, Florida, and from there, Disney's only a short drive away. If you have any experience with it, how was it? Would you recommend it? If you haven't used it, what do you think? Do you think it's still worth it? Also, what else is there to do outside of Disney in the Orlando area, whether it's theme parks, restaurants, hangout spots, etc., because we'll be in Florida for more time than we're at Disney, so we want to find some things to do in between. Great question. Never had any experience with the Auto Train or Amtrak or just training down in general. Never really done it. It's funny to say that I only this past year rode like an extended train, you know, from city to city for the first time in my life. Normally, the trains I'm used to are the subway trains in New York City. But I would imagine it'd be a fine trip. Of course, it's going to be longer than flying. I don't know if it's going to be cheaper than flying. In my experience, when I started looking at train prices and things like that, it seems to be about the same. But it's a different experience. You know, if you don't want to deal, I feel like security is more lax, at least in my limited one-time experience riding, you know, a long-distance train. The security is more lax than it is at, you know, an airport. And then you're bringing your car with you, which could be like a very valuable thing to do, because like you've mentioned, you're going to be in Orlando longer than you're actually at Disney, so you're going to need a way to get around. So the alternative is to fly down and rent a car versus paying to bring the car with you, or, you know, driving down, but then there's sort of stress involved with that on top of, you know, the cost both in gasoline and then the cost in just, you know, putting all those miles on your car. So I say give it a shot. I haven't heard any horrible experiences about that. In regards to what to do outside Orlando, I mean, there's plenty to do. There's Universal, of course, there's Busch Gardens, but if you have your car with you, which you do, as you've explained, then you don't have to just think locally. There's so much that you can do in Florida. And of course I say so much, but now I'm only thinking of a couple things. But, you know, maybe go over to the Gulf Coast and, you know, go to the beach on the Gulf. It's, you know, a very beautiful. I have family that's nearby there, and so I've gone to the Gulf, and it could be so beautiful. Head on over to Cape Canaveral and do some tours and check out some cool NASA stuff. You know, that's really exciting, and it's a cool way to learn and also check out, you know, where a lot of history is made. Maybe if you're even lucky, it'll be, you know, around the time they're launching something, so you could watch a launch. So there's plenty to do. You know, as far as theme parks and attractions like that, and the fact that you have a vehicle, or you'll have a vehicle down there, makes it all the more easier to pull off. I am totally lost, don't know where I'm walking, never been to Disneyland, so this is all a new experience. Oh, this is the exit. It's the exit of Space Mountain. Okay, great question. Let's move on to the next one, and it's from It's Always Disney Time, who says, do you think that Disney are moving towards IPs that they have bought rather than Disney movies in their new attractions, such as Star Wars Land and Avatar Land? Are the Disney rides in danger of being replaced with non-Disney IPs? Well, I think it's totally fair to say that you feel that that's what's happening, right? Because we are hearing about, you know, a refurb to the Great Movie Ride, to Star Wars Land, to Avatar, talk to expanding Pixar, which is kind of Disney, but also in a bit kind of not, since they were purchased by Disney. So, you know, in a lot of ways, I could see why you would think that. I don't think that's a bad thing, though. I think maybe, if anything, that's Disney catching up to decades and decades of an imbalance that just naturally comes from the fact that Disney didn't own these IPs decades and decades ago. You know, I don't think it's at risk. I don't think you're going to see a day where there just aren't Disney rides or there are few Disney rides. I think it's more like, you know, when you step back and look at Disney as a portfolio of properties, you know, there are all these Disney cartoons. There are the Mickey Mouses and the Alice in Wonderlands and things like that. But then there are also now Star Wars and Marvel, and Avatar is not part of their portfolio, but they have that deal. And so it seems like they're more trying to create a sense of balance and add some more of that, especially things like Star Wars, where they spent so much money to acquire it that they kind of have to do something with it, or else it's just going to be, you know, it's going to be a waste of money on their part. So, yeah, I think it's fair to say that you're seeing more of it happen. I just don't think that that's a bad thing or it's a bad sign. I don't think it's going to be, you know, go out of control to the point where there's just nothing Disney left. Our next question, as we wander around Disneyland here, is from Matt Bobcat World, who asks, would you ever like to see older extinct attractions from Disneyland and Disney World return to the park, such as the Timekeeper, Honey, I Shrunk the Audience, or even Alien Encounter? Also, what is your reaction to on Disneyland in California closing the Cars Land ride, Luigi's Flying Tires, even though it hasn't been open for 2 years? So to your first question, I actually would not want to see that. I wouldn't want to see old rides come back. I love them. I love old attractions, but I am also a big adopter of that sort of look forward mentality, look to the new. I miss Horizons. I miss the Timekeeper, you know, Honey, I Shrunk the Audience. And I have those memories, but I know a lot of it is nostalgia, and I don't really need to go back and see that again. And sure, to an extent, you'd think, okay, well, this would be cool for people who've never experienced it to experience it, but I feel like there are other ways to do that today. You know, I think the big focus, and the reason why I picked this question to answer, because I love talking about this idea, because I wish Disney would do it, is I would love to see them do, like, some really extensive memorabilia and ways to remember these attractions when they do close down. You know, for instance, they're closing, what's an attraction they're closing that would have been a good one? I mean, I always go to Horizons because it's my favorite, but okay, let's say when Horizons was closing, put out like a beautiful making of book that details the history of Horizons and shows all these great high quality photos of Horizons. Maybe include a Blu-ray or a DVD with a ride through of Horizon so you could watch it and hear it and listen to it and experience it. Maybe include like a little trinket, maybe like the ride vehicle as a small miniature, or maybe even if you want to do a super expensive version, include an actual limited edition prop from the attraction. And so this is a way for, you know, Disney to one, capitalize and profit off of the closing of an attraction, which typically costs money because they have to break it down and everything. And two, it gives fans and diehard fans a way to remember the attraction so that they have something they can turn to, you know, throw out an MP3 download of the soundtrack, something like that would be awesome. It gives people a way to remember these rides that they love so fondly, and it also provides material for people who want to learn more about it and experience it in their own way. I think that's the way to go with attractions that close, not so much the idea of bringing them back, because I feel like the resources that go into bringing them back are resources that could go into creating something new. As for your second question, closing Luigi's Flying Tires, never wrote it, so I can't comment on whether or not I think it should have been closed, but I do kind of like the idea that Disney is quick to react and Disney is quick to sort of adapt to the way people. I'm assuming if they closed it, it's probably because it cost too much to maintain, or it wasn't popular enough, or a combination of the two. And I think it's a cool idea to do that sooner rather than later, when people would then be asking, why didn't they close this years ago when people stopped riding it? 2 years, I don't know. I'm not a theme park expert in the sense that I don't know if that's enough time to gauge whether or not a ride's going to be successful in the long run, but you know, that's the decision they made. Our next question, I'm heading out. We're going to head over to the Disney California Adventure, which is also on the server. And our next question comes from B. Fish Alex Imagineering, who asks, we've talked about how Walt Disney's vision of Epcot as a functional technological showcase would not have worked in today's day and age, but what if it had succeeded? How do you think Epcot would have influenced the future of American industry? This is a fantastic question, not only because it's one of those what-if questions, but it kind of turns it on its head. I've always talked about how I don't think Walt's Epcot would have worked because I feel like the way our technological the way our tech industry just functions just doesn't gel with the way Walt wanted to run Epcot. And I was always on the assumption that the tech industry would have trumped Walt's Epcot, but I never thought of it in terms of, you know, maybe Walt's Epcot would have changed the way the tech industry worked. Maybe it would have. I mean, granted, that was, you know, he was thinking of Epcot at a time where our modern Silicon Valley was just really starting to be born. You know, with transistors, things like that, and you know, going to the moon. the reason why I don't think Epcot would have worked is because, look at today's world. Apple keeps everything under wraps. Google keeps a lot of things under wraps. And so this concept of having a city where you're showing off all the latest and greatest just would have been prohibitive. There wouldn't have been anything to show off. On top of that, how often are they coming out with a new Android phone? Like, pretty often. Imagine trying to swap that out for an entire city. I don't think it would have slowed down the progress of technology. I don't think tech companies would have gone, well, we've got to replace all this at Epcot. I think this would have been Epcot's downfall, is the fact that we as a society have just developed technology faster and faster and faster. And I think that would have been not the downfall of Epcot. That sounds so dramatic. But I think that would have been one of the reasons Epcot would have just gone from being a city of the future to just, a city. So I think in that sense, it would have failed. Maybe it would have just been fine as a city that's just like really well planned. Walt was obsessed with city planning at that point in his life towards the end of it. And I had no doubt that if he were to make Epcot, it probably would have been the only thing on his mind at that time. And it probably would have been really well done and really, walled garden is the word that I think applies best to the things that Disney does. So I think maybe today it would have existed as just like a nice Disney-owned community that's, you're seeing Disney do that. They did that with Celebration for a while, and now they've got Golden Oak, which is just like very beautifully designed and well laid out. And it's not necessarily a city of the future, but it's showing that, their qualities as designers can carry over into residential life as well. Our next question comes from Julian Suarez, who asks, let's see, this question I think was worded a little weirdly. Being the Alice in Wonderland nerd I am, I feel like a section of the park based off the classics like Maleficent themed dark ride, or even an Alice in Wonderland themed walkthrough, seeing huge teapots and stuff like that would be great. I'm adding that last part in. Mickey has PhilharMagic, but that's not enough for basically a park with such Mickey-ness. Classics. I mean, that's a tough line to balance, right? People love the classics, but people also want new stuff. I think the tough part here is people want new and exciting things, and like we just mentioned earlier in the episode, Disney just picked up Marvel. Relatively speaking, it's a new property for them. Star Wars is a brand new property in that same relative term. Pixar as well. So I feel like you're not going to see that. I would love to see the classics, and I would love to see that as a way of introducing the classics to, people who are young and maybe not too familiar with it. But I don't see it happening anytime soon, just because, there's only so much money and resources to go around. And right now, the new baby is, Marvel, Star Wars, Pixar, and, it's getting more attention. I don't think that's a bad thing either. I think it's one of those things that's going to ebb and flow, and, maybe that'll wind down in 10 years or so, and we'll start to see more of a push back to the classics as maybe they come out of the vault more and become, more loved, even more loved, I love the idea of a walkthrough with, like, all this giant stuff. Just giant stuff in general is really cool. I was a big fan of the Honey, I Shrunk the Kids playset in Hollywood Studios, so stuff like that would be cool. Great question. Our next questions come from Copycat705 again, throwing out all those questions. Let's see. Has there ever been a ride where you weren't expecting it to be any good, but it blew you away? And then the other question was, how come during Space Mountain's 2009 refurbishment, it went from being a complete Disneyland-style refurb to just new Q games and stuff like that? I said earlier that I don't want to be a negative Nancy, but this annoys me because it's not like Disney can't afford it. So, to your second question, I actually don't know if there's any official reason. I actually wasn't even aware of the idea that there were plans to make it a total refurbishment. Now, I do know that Space Mountain in Disney World was a special case because that was a ride where I believe they had to build the track first and then the structure around it. So to do a complete refurb that changes the track and things like that would likely involve just a major renovation. And my suspicion isn't that they couldn't afford it or didn't want to spend the money, but when they looked at it and realized how long, one of their e-ticket attractions would be down versus, what they'd get out of it, it probably just didn't seem like it would be like the the choice that was worth it. I always thought that it was intended to just be what it was, which is the minor refurb. I thought the major one was for Disneyland only, but I could be wrong. This is part of Cars Land. I've never been to Cars Land. I want to go to Cars Land so badly. I got to get myself to Disney at some point. And for your first question, a ride that I didn't think would be great but really blew me away. Now that's tough because I'm trying to think of firsts. Everest. Everest really was a surprise. I didn't think it was going to be bad or anything, but I just thought it was going to be a typical roller coaster. And I knew the premise was of this Yeti, but I didn't know about the big Yeti, the big one. And at this point I had ridden it. The ride was new enough that it was still in A mode, so the Yeti moved. And so, you know, if you've never been on the ride, you sort of swoop into this cavernous area, and the Yeti's really far away, and that sort of perspective makes him look really tiny. And then you swoop really close, and you realize just how massive this animatronic Yeti is. And so I was completely caught off guard, and it swipes at you. And that was one of the few times at Disney where, like, it was like an involuntary yell, like a scream. Like, when I scream on roller coasters, it's for fun. I'm doing it, you know, with intention, and I know what I'm doing. But that one was totally involuntary, totally caught me off guard and scared me. And it was really, really cool and made it a very memorable first time riding. Our next question comes from David Willis, who asks, hey, Rob, if you ever moved to Florida, do you think it would be more aware of the food at the parks because you wouldn't be spoiled by all the good food in New York? That's a good question. I guess maybe. Yeah, I guess so. Like, here's the thing. I don't like eat very fancy food here in New York or anything. I'm still, you know, I'll go to lunch at a Chipotle or a Subway or something like that. So it's not like, you know, high class, turn up my nose, New York eating. I think it's just more like because those options are there, it shows, and the fact that I don't go to them regularly here in the city, I think it says something to my palate in that I don't need like super fancy food. I'm okay with, like, you know, just down to earth diner food. I just had diner food today, and I love that sort of stuff. So I guess my standards for good eating is a lot lower than some other people. Who knows? Maybe living in Florida would change that. We would have to see. Our next question comes from the Bros 3, who asks, what do you think Disney should do with the land from River Country? That's a great question. So River Country was a water park, closed down. A lot of rumors about why. People talking about brain-eating amoebas, which there was somebody who died from an amoeba that does infect your brain, but that's not why they closed it. They closed it much later than that. It was really more of just a boring financial decision. I actually don't think they should do anything with it. I mean, if you haven't, go look up River Country Disney World today, and you can see photos of people who have snuck onto the island and, like, done, you know, urban exploration style touring of River Country that's closed down and you're not supposed to be there. And it looks really sweet. It's all, like, overgrown with green plant life, and it just looks like an abandoned theme park. And I think it's kind of cool to have that piece of Disney history there. Like, I don't think we need to develop every bit of Disney property, and I think having that there, just letting nature take over, being able to see in 10, 20, 30 years what it looks like would be really cool. Having that bit of history so you can tell that story would be really cool. So I actually just don't want to see them do anything with it. Maybe eventually at some point when it's so overgrown, make some sort of tour with it so you could take a tour of River Country as it is today. And then finally, we have, well, two more questions, actually. Marshall asks, how old is Big Thunder Mountain? Great question. Big Thunder Mountain here in Disneyland opened in 1979, and Big Thunder Mountain in Disney World opened just a year later in 1980. So it's old, older than me, older than you probably. But in terms of the park's histories, it's newer than, you know, opening day. And our final question for the week comes from ZDuval11, who asks, as of now, it's a rumor, but opinions of Inside Out going to Wonders of Life. So I don't even think this is a rumor. I think I did some Googling on this, and the best I could see is there were people on threads on, like, Disney forums asking about this as an idea. I don't think it's actually got any grounding as a rumor. I think we're too far out from this movie, the Pixar's, you know, Inside Out coming out, for it to even be like a substantial rumor. But that as an idea, I think I'm torn, because I loved the Wonders of Life when it was open and I was going as a guest. and it is closed, and I would love to see them do something with Wonders of Life, but I don't think Inside Out is the direction I would like to see it go. And the reason I say that is because it's quite a fanciful movie from what we've seen. It's, you know, it's the Pixar movie where all these little characters represent the emotions of the main character in her head, and I see the connection there because Wonders of Life had Cranium Command, which had all these comedians inside their head, but I think Cranium Command was more about the bodily functions rather than, you know, you could almost liken it to a non-Disney movie, Osmosis Jones, than, you know, Pixar, which seems to be more about emotions and just a great way to represent the inner mind of a person. And I would love to see Wonders of Life come back, but I would want to see the focus be on health and on the human body and how technology and the future is helping us with our bodies, whether it's prosthetics or wearable tech. I just got a new Fitbit today. I love using my Fitbit. That's cool. And I think the Wonders of Life would be the perfect pavilion to sort of explore the future of technologies like that, where I don't see it being as sort of the emotion side. I think that would be a great fit for something like the Imagination Pavilion, or actually, I think the Imagination Pavilion would be a cool place. I think let's put Inside Out in the Imagination Pavilion. That's a great idea. Bob Iger, that one's free. On behalf of me and Z Duval, that's a free idea. You can have that one. Next one will cost you. Anyway, I want to thank everybody for all of the questions. If you have a question, feel free to leave it in the comments below. If you can't leave it there, you could always tweet me at RobPlays. I am not doing face cam this week. As you've noticed, I am looking sort of bummy today, and also because I've been going back to the gym, just want to plug my new series, Over Encumbered, which is all about that journey. I have a little less time than usual to produce videos, and so I had to do the quicker method here, which is just wandering around the parks. I want to thank my little Q&A crew here for following me around. I want to thank Magical Dreams for hosting me. If you want to check it out, their server is main.magicaldreams.us, I believe, and you can check out Disneyland, and they've got all the rides, and they changed all the texture packs. It's really neat. Have a great week, everybody. Whatever you're doing, make the most of it, because it makes it that much better. I hope to see you next time for the next episode of the Disney Q&A. Bye, everybody.